In this video, I'll be providing a high-level overview of the UI in Flare, as well as an intro to some of the features that are available in the application. To get started, I want to talk about the welcome box that you can see here in front of me. This will display every time that the application launches, and it provides an overview of the most recent shows that you have been working on. Additionally, it gives you a list of templates that you can select and load to start so that you don't have to start from scratch. Now, before I load up my Flare demo here, I do want to mention that if you have any feature requests, or if you'd like to visit the roadmap, you can select these links up here. Or if you'd like to get some more information on the current version of Flare that you have installed, you can click the release notes to see what has been improved from previous versions. All right, so what I'm going to do, I'm going to load up this Flare demo and we can get started. All right, so it looks like things have been loaded. The first thing I want to talk about is the toolbar in the upper left. So this is pretty standard. We have a file, edit, and import menu. In the file menu, we have new show, save, save as, load show, and quit. In the edit, we have a key bindings and settings menu. So in the key bindings, this will just list all of the key bindings and the associated actions with each of those. And then within our settings menu, we have a list of graphical settings that you can change, as well as Dmx settings such as your Dmx protocol and your network interface. So if you'd like to set this to SACN, this is where you can do that. All right, and then additionally, we have an import menu that gives some options on what you can import in, such as mesh files, MVR files, and GDTFs. Okay, so next let's move on to our library panel here. So the library panel contains libraries for both the fixtures and for the assets contained within the application. So I'm going to first start off by explaining the fixtures. So the left column of the fixture library here is the manufacturers or the category of each of the fixtures. And as you can see, when I click on the categories, a list of fixtures shows up in the right panel, in the right column per se. Okay, now you can see that we only have a set of generic fixtures now, but in time we will continue to expand this and add other manufacturers that contain more lights. All right, now just real quick, I don't want to go too deeply into this, but if you would like to add a fixture to the scene, what you can do is select one of the fixtures in the right column, hold your left mouse button down and drag it into the scene, and you'll see that you'll get a preview here, and you'll be presented with a dialog box for setting some of the settings. All right, so that is the fixture library. Next, let's talk about our asset library here. So you can select that button, and it will change your window to look like this. So we have a number of folders here. So we have models, materials, textures, tools, and effects. Now you can double click to navigate in here. And so if I go into models, you can see that we've got some generic models, as well as a number of folders which have some more complex meshes, such as trusses, or stage parts, or roofing, and so on and so forth. Now, the process of adding something to the scene or adding a model to the scene is very similar to that of fixtures. You simply press your left mouse button, click and drag, and move it into the scene, and you see that a new model is added to the scene. All right. Next, we have materials. I will go over these a little bit more later, but these just list the materials available to use inside of the application. We have textures, which is not currently being used right now, but it will be in the future. We have tools. Now, this is where if you'd like to add an NDI object and receive NDI into Flare, you can drag this object into the scene. And then we also have some particle effects, which are some smoke clouds that you can also drag into the scene. All right, so that is our asset library here. And next, let's move down to our bottom panel, which contains some pretty interesting tools. So the first tool in our bottom panel that is selected by default is the Look Editor and Look Launcher. Now, I'm not going to go too deeply into this. I'm going to make another video on this later, but to give you a quick demo of it, you can see sort of how all of this works. But more or less, we store Dmx presets, and we are able to trigger those through these tracks and these clips. So I'll just give you a quick demo here. You can see as I move down and click the play button on these tracks, it will trigger all of the looks that I have saved into the application and provide us with a view of what things could look like at certain points. So very cool. It's fun to work with, fun to play around with. So that is the look editor. Next, let's go to our sequence editor here. Now, the sequence editor is a panel where we can create camera sequences and actually have a nice like video rendering and have the camera move inside of the scene along a rail, essentially. So to give you a demo here, I can press the play, and you'll see that our camera will gradually move, and we can see some of the lights respond to DMX that has been recorded in. Now, I'd like to mention that if you look at our clip down here, you can see that it has this red bar up here. That indicates that DMX has been recorded and does exist for this video clip. But we can create other video clips, and you can see here, for instance, on this one, it does not have any DMX recorded. Now, if you'd like to preview a camera clip, you can just click your mouse here, and you can just scrub it along and sort of see what the clip will look like upon playing. We've also got another one here where we can zoom up. You can set your clip name and your clip length above this scrub bar here. All right, so that is the camera sequencer. One thing else I'd like to mention here is we also have some render settings down at the bottom. So if you would like to render out one of your camera sequences, you can click this render button and select where you'd like to save it, and it will render it out frame by frame. All right, next let's go down to this DMX icon here, and this represents our Dmx Patcher Viewer, or Dmx Patch Viewer. So what this window does is it lists all of the universes that we have with registered fixtures inside of them. So if I select the one of these universe rows here, you can see that it'll actually list the fixtures that are contained within that universe. So for instance, on universe 1, we have moving head 1, moving head 2. We have all of our moving heads, which are these ones up here. And if I hover my mouse over any of these columns, it will give us some information on the starting address and ending address. Additionally, if we click on them, we will actually select the object inside of the scene. And finally, we can also click and drag and move it around to repatch it to a particular address. And you can see as I let go, it will actually change the starting address. All right. Cool. So that is the Dmx Patcher. Next, let's move on to our world settings here. Now, the world settings just sort of change the look and feel of the environment, such as the time of day or the weather of our scene. So I can go through and I can select these presets here, and it will change the sun and the sun position and brightness and such. We can also change our weather, which includes clouds, sun, and snow. And if you would like some more advanced settings, you can click this icon here, and it will give you full control over the environment. And if you move things a lot and you don't like how it looks, and you want to reset it to how it was, you can always click this button down here, and it will reset everything to its default settings. All right, so that is the bottom panel. Next, let's look up at our object list here in the upper right. So the object list is pretty much what it sounds like. It's just a list of objects inside of the scene, and the objects can either be individually listed or they can be grouped together into a group. So for instance, you can see here that I have a number of objects grouped together, such as fireworks, flame modules, moving heads, point lights, stage parts, and trusses. And then we have individual objects such as our platform and our flare logo. Now, if I would like to see the objects that are inside of these groups, I can press the drop down and it'll show me those objects, and I can ungroup, or I can and then I can see those, or I can unlock a group in order to select individual ones, such as this unlock group. There we go. All right. Now within this object list, we also have the ability to filter by the type of object. So up at the top, you'll see the All Assets and Fixtures button. If we click those, it'll actually filter the objects in the list by their type. So for instance, if I click Assets, it will not display any fixtures. So if I go to the flame module or moving heads, it won't show anything. But if I go to stage parts, it'll show us our stage parts. And the opposite is true if we go over to fixtures here. It will only show the fixtures in the scene, and it won't show things such as stage parts. So it's just a way to sort of categorize and filter out some things in the scene so you don't have a giant list. All right, next let's go down to our details panel here. Now, the details panel essentially just provides us information about whatever object we have selected in the scene. And depending on which type of object you have selected, you'll be presented with different properties. Now, every mesh or every object does have a shared set of properties. So every object will have a name, location, rotation, and scale. But as you can see, I have a fixture selected right now, and it gives us universe and settings properties. But if I select a non-fixture, it will remove those, and we only see name, location, rotation, and scale. Okay, so that is our general settings. Next, let's go to our material settings here. So the material settings allows us to replace a material from an object with a material that we have selected in our material library. So just to give you a quick example of how that works, I can go over to our materials folder here, go into default. Let's go to, say, grass, and I can change the material of this platform to grass. There we go. We got some grass. So that is the materials. Next, let's go to our mesh settings. So our mesh settings allow us to replace a particular mesh with something else. So for instance, if I have this platform selected, and maybe I want to replace this with a stage, I can do that. So I'm going to make sure that's selected. I'm going to go over to my models, go over to my stage parts, and I'll select this stage and select replace. And you can see when I replace it, it will completely remove the mesh, but it'll also retain all of the transform properties such as location, rotation, and scale. So I'm going to undo that, and here we go. We have our platform back. All right, what is next here? Then we have, after our mesh settings, we have our DMX settings. Now, the DMX settings are kind of what it sounds like. It's the settings for DMX objects. So if I select a fixture inside of the scene, you'll see here that it'll present me with all of the, well, first of all, the fixture mode of that fixture, as well as the functions that are contained within that mode for this fixture. And what I can do here is I can come through and I can just adjust the different settings or the different functions, and I can see what it's going to look like if I move them around and if I change DMX. Now, you don't have to control DMX from here. You can also send DMX from an external source, whether that's an application or a console, and it will still it will be received, and you'll see the updates here in real time. All right, so that is the UI in Flare. There's actually one last thing that I'd like to mention, and that is these settings up here at the top. Now, we have, first off, on the left, we have our snap settings. So if you would like to move an object in the scene, but you'd like it to snap to a certain interval, you make sure that this is green, and then you also want to set the interval that you'd like it to be snapping to. So for instance, if I want it to be snapping to 50 centimeter increments, and I want it to be snapping, so I have that on. Now when I move this, you can see that it snaps to that location. And if I turn this off, then it will move much more smoothly. Okay. Next, we've got on the right here, we've got a little metronome you can see, and this is our camera speed, or our camera speed for the movement inside of the scene. So right now it's set to 4, but if maybe I have like a much larger scene and I want to move faster, I can bump it up, and now my speed is going to be much quicker. Or if I have maybe an indoor scene and I want to be more precise with my movements, I can lower that down. So that's just our camera movement speed. And then next to that, we have our beam quality. So we have, by default, it's set to high, but you can set it to low if you would like to maybe save on some performance, or if you can set it up to epic if you're going to be doing some rendering. All right, so that is the UI in Flare and a quick overview of some of the features that we've got available. So thank you a lot for watching. We hope that this answered some of your questions and helps you to get started in building inside of Flare. We're excited to see what you can build. If you have any comments or questions, please leave them below. And I will see you in the next video. Thanks.